Hello, litigators. Court is now in session. My gosh, it's so eerie to see some of the background information about Bryan Kohberger's family. It just seems the more I hear about his family and different information, it becomes more disturbing. I don't know if you guys have heard much about Bryan Kohberger's mother, but I find an article, or at least a statement she wrote in a newspaper a couple years ago, to be quite disturbing. Okay. So, years back, when Ted Bundy was going to be executed, Mary Ann Kohber, who is Bryan Kohberger's mother, wrote this statement in the newspaper that is quite eerie, quite cryptic. And who would imagine that years, decades later, it would be her own son who may be possibly facing the death penalty? So let's hear what she said about Ted Bundy years ago. In this article, she wrote, "Cheering the hearse, Brooklyn." So she was in Brooklyn by this time. "Perhaps one of the saddest commentaries of mankind was evident during the execution of Theodore Bundy. While no sane, compassionate individual would excuse the atrocities committed by this man, neither would any sane individual applaud the passing of his funeral hearse. What have we become? Is the taking of human life acceptable when the state takes responsibility for it?" Wow. The very words of Bryan Kohberger's mother. And we've heard before, we talked before about Bryan Kohberger's sister writing that poem about the killings of the beautiful kids at the school in Texas. We talked about that. And now, we're hearing about the mother speaking out against Ted Bundy's execution. So we can already look into the mind of the mother and her viewpoint of course, now her son, who may possibly be facing the death penalty, and what she thinks about that. Isn't that crazy? This family, I just want to go into the family and the different aspects of them, because I just find some of this information that we're hearing about the family to be quite ironic. Let's just kind of go over some weird things that we've heard about these different ironic information that we're hearing. So there's also, what I've seen out here is a video of the kind of clippings of the horror movie that Bryan Kohberger's sister was in. And I thought this video here depicted some of the footage that we could actually see, just a little bit of clips of it in this video, this news video. So let's take a look at this video from, I think this is News Nation. I think it is. I might be wrong though, but I like the video either way. So let's just listen to it and see. I wanted you to see the actual video, some of the video clips of that film that Bryan Kohberger's sister was in. And the ironic thing about it is that it was a stabbing. It was a horror movie that featured the victims being stabbed to death. And then who would have known years later? So, just thinking of his mother's mindset, his sister playing in these horror movies, I wonder if some of this fed this guy's thought process of what method he would choose, because we already knew the guy was sick. I told you, he really makes me think of an incel. And actually, before they determined who the possible suspect would be, guys, they said that they believed that the killer would be an incel. I've watched some of the experts come out before we discovered that Bryan Kohberger was the suspect. Some of the experts that have been featured on a lot of our high-profile news stations predicted it would be an incel. And Lord and behold, I really think Bryan Kohberger reminds me of also another killer. Remember Elliot Rodger? We'll watch Elliot Rodger's video at the end, but Elliot Rodger was a well-known incel in California, and he was a narcissist, and he used to have a YouTube channel. And on his YouTube channel, he would just vent about him being the most hottest guy, supreme gentleman, and how these hot sorority women didn't like him. And so he would go around driving to the different sorority women's houses, and he would just do these films, and he'd be like, yeah, look at her and how hot she is, and she just wants to be with these losers. And he would point out different men that he could despise, saying, oh, look how hot those guys are, and they keep getting these hot girls, and I'm way better than them, and how come I can't get them? And he would buy all these name brand clothes and rich out and wear these Gucci outfits and different stuff like that. And he thought that was what could attract a woman, and it really wasn't. He would go to parks, and then if he would be filming at the parks, and while he's sitting there, there'd be like this cute little couple that would come sit right in front of him, and he would be agitated. He'd be like, here we go again with these couples. I'm enjoying my nice day at the park, and here's this couple coming just to make me jealous. And he just like, the guy was sick. And it made me start thinking back at Bryan. I'm thinking, man, this guy probably in college used to look at sorority girls like Kaylee, like Maddie, like Zana, those hot girls that are in the sororities that he could never get, similar to Elliot. And so, thinking back on those days when he always wanted to be a part of the sororities and the fraternities, and nobody wanted to accept this guy because he was a complete creep. It was his personality that creeped people out. But he, instead of looking internally and trying to get help for whatever issues he had or personality flaws he had, like Elliot, he exerted all of the blame onto the women and the men in society, saying, you deprived me of having the ability to feel love. You deprived me of being able to feel gratification. I wouldn't be surprised if Mr. Bryan Kohberger is the V word. I'm just saying, I wouldn't be surprised, because it doesn't seem like he really knew how to interact with women. But let's go into this video, y'all.
Life imitating art, murder suspect Bryan Kohberger's sister appears in a gory slasher film.
Out of my mind.
34-year-old Amanda Kohberger has been there with the rest of her family to support her brother. Years earlier, in 2011, she had a part in a low-budget film 2 days back. The movie has a typical horror movie plot. Students who venture into the woods only to be slashed to death. Her name appears in the credits. The movie director says he was floored when Bryan Kohberger was arrested in the University of Idaho slayings case. His sister played.
Did you see that? Like in the film where they're being slashed, like stabbed in the back and stuff? I'm really starting to wonder. I'm like, did Bryan Kohberger get this idea from that 2011 slasher movie that his sister was featured in? I mean, stuff is starting to like click when you look at the different pieces and you start putting it together, and you're like, man, there was some real creepy stuff about this family. I'm just saying. And I understand the mother, guys. I get it that the mother was showing empathy for Ted Bundy, but you got to think about it, guys. Did Ted Bundy show empathy for any of the victims he brutally massacred? I mean, this guy literally escaped prison or escaped jail just so he could go brutally murder to death sorority women throughout a sorority house. Similar to how Bryan did that whole slashing of those beautiful girls. So, in the poor young man, but that's what I really think. I think he wanted to unalive Ethan too, because he despised Ethan, because Ethan was able to even get these gorgeous, this gorgeous girls on us. So it's like, he knew they were going to be there. Come on, he stalked them. So he knew their routine. He saw their social media. I'm pretty sure he knew that they were going to be there, and especially because he's been there 12 times. And it's known that what individuals say is that Ethan usually likes to stay there every night with Zana. He's like a quasi roommate. It's not that he's like an actual roommate, but you might as well say he is kind of an indirect roommate because he's there a lot. So I just started to think, man, guys, he probably despised not just the women that he thought he had this attraction to, but on the other side of it, he despised people like Ethan, who had the charisma and the personality and the looks to attract sorority girls that I think he wanted. And something's ironic about this, guys, but it seems like these incels that are in the younger community, they seem in the college community, they seem to despise sorority girls. I'm like, what is it? What is it about the sorority girls? Because they're the hot, gorgeous blondes. It's like, that's the same thing with Elliot Rodger. He wanted the hot, gorgeous, blonde sorority girls. Even when he was going on this massacre, he went to a sorority house and tried to knock on the door and see if he could get in so he could unalive all the gorgeous blonde sorority girls in there. Thank God they didn't answer the door, guys. But It's like, man, it started making me put the pieces together when you start looking at these various individuals out there, and you can really start to understand maybe possibly the mindset of this sick guy Bryan if he committed these crimes. But it's really starting to look too suspicious. I'm just saying, too many pieces fit together. And then you see her the background, and I'm just thinking, I mean, I get the mom, but I'm like, come on, Mary girl. Did you know really about what Ted Bundy did? I mean, how many people he unalived? And he would have kept doing it, and he felt no remorse. And had he been released again, he would have just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. Sometimes the government does need to step in and take control. I'm just saying, there's times in life when some people need to be they need to go undergo the death penalty. I'm just saying, it is what it is. Okay. And Mr. Ted Bundy, if anybody is, I would say, qualified to be executed, definitely Ted Bundy. Like, so it's just, I find that ironic. Don't you think a little bit ironic that the mom writes this newspaper article and then her son ends up now almost possibly may face the death penalty? And then looking at these video clippings of the stabbings in this movie, I'm like, what? Did you see that, guys? Let's look at those film clippings again. That was crazy to see that in these clippings, the girls get slashed. And here's this video right here. This clip right here is of Bryan Kohberger's sister. She's absolutely stunning. But let's watch that again. That's so ironic. Guys, do you think Bryan got the idea of stabbing these poor victims from his sister's movie? What do you think?
In a low-budget film 2 days back. The movie has a typical horror movie plot: students who venture into the woods only to be slashed to death. Her name appears in the credits. The movie director says he was floored when Bryan Kohberger was arrested in the University of Idaho slayings case. His sister played Lori in the film.
The first reaction is shock. The first reaction is, "Oh my God, are you kidding?"
Kevin Boone says Amanda Kohberger came to an open call.
She came in audition. We liked her, so I offered one of the major roles.
You got to also think, man, eerie coincidence too between what happened in Idaho and this movie where it's young people getting stabbed.
Yeah, I can understand where people would want to make this connection.
And this week's 48 Hours does a deep dive into the case the whole country is talking about.
He's almost like a chameleon. It depends on where you are.
Correspondent Peter Van Sant spoke with Kohberger's high school friend.
Bryan was really funny. He wasn't outgoing at all. But he also wasn't shy.
He aspired to be an Army Ranger. A classmate.
See, did you hear that? He aspired to be an Army Ranger. You got to put the pieces together. And that's what the prosecutor is going to do. Every little bit and piece, dating back to even Bryan's relationships, will be presented in the trial that will create a picture for you that can show the motive and the intent behind this man's deprived mind. Okay? And again, a disclaimer is he's innocent until proven guilty. But look at that he had this goal of getting into the Army and stuff like that, and how it connects to even the very knife he chose in this tragedy. The very knife that he chose is the knife that they use in that type of field and in the military and stuff like that. So when you think about it, you start putting those pieces together, it creates the picture that it was Bryan, in my opinion. And again, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. I understand that. But I'm just saying, the more these pieces start to come out, even looking at the background of the family, it starts to become quite disturbing and sinister that Bryan was just as if he was this ticking time bomb that was waiting for the right opportunity and the right person that he came in contact with to explode. And I think he developed this animosity towards really gorgeous girls and sororities, kind of like what Elliot Rodger was like, because those were the type of women that he desired. Yet those were the type of women that didn't even want him. I haven't even heard of him being in a fraternity or anything. I wonder if frat guys in college wouldn't even have a time or a day with this guy being in their fraternity because of just how odd he was. So again, it seems like he was in that incel community. The more we learn about this guy, I'm interested in knowing what the prosecutors know about this guy's background, because of course we have the probable cause affidavit, but as mentioned, that is only the skeletal foundation of what they have. We don't have all of their information, meaning, for example, when you have a skeleton, you're missing what? The eyes, the skin, the hair, all that. We're missing all that. So there's a lot more. I can't wait. And I hope that the prosecutor really, really delves into this guy's mind and we can get some serious context to this guy. But I'm really starting to think, I don't know if you guys think the same, if you guys have seen all the other people that came out talking about this guy, if you also think that he might be from the incel community. But what do y'all think? Something about this man sounds like he has not had good relations or long-term relations with women. And starting to think, looking at his background, seeing how empathetic his mom was to serial killers. I mean, come on, Ted Bundy. So it's like she kind of internally built this acceptance of this type of behavior in her household. And her son grew up around that. So, of course, because he has this mom that has this empathy for these type of individuals, that also, he would think in his mind, well, if I were to do something like that, my mom would be okay with that. It's like, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, I wonder if in the household, if she's taught, him certain things. I'm just saying, because I'm like, are you in the house speaking like this? Oh yeah, I think people like Ted Bundy should not get the death penalty. Although I know some people are against the death penalty. So I'm not saying you can't be against the death penalty. There are people that have certain stance against the death penalty. And I get it, but I'm just saying, to do a whole newspaper article about it, I think it's going a little too far when you take it that far. Then I'm wondering how she's communicating with him in the household about stuff like that. Because I mean, that could build in his mind that it's a form of acceptance. I don't know. I'm just thinking him as a kid, hearing his mom stand up for this serial killer, what that builds in his mind. You know what I mean? And then him seeing his sister playing this horror movie with her being stabbed to death. I'm just like, this feels like these different stages in this young man's life kind of built a monster in him. And then when he was bullied as a kid by these girls throwing things at him, allegedly what their rumors are alleging, plus him being rejected in his adulthood from women based upon statements from individuals, it just sounds like this guy was a ticking time bomb who was waiting for the opportunity for the individual to explode.
Of Kohberger'S from here at Pleasant Valley High School in Pennsylvania has reportedly said that the now quadruple murder suspect was out of shape and overweight in his younger years until he took a boxing class. And that's when the friend says his whole demeanor changed. He became aggressive, was always looking to pick fights.
It was after that weight loss that a lot of people noticed a huge switch in him. My brother has since come out to say that, they were friends. Bryan bullied him. He would put him in chokeholds and stuff like that.
He's a man that some say is brilliant, a man who commands the room.
Van Sant says he also learned something that in retrospect is very
Okay, what's really frustrating and irritating about some of these people on like in the newspapers and all that, or interviews like this, they're amping this guy up. He's brilliant. He has an amazing mind. He's a genius. That's what he wants you to say about him. You're stroking this guy's ego who wants people to praise and worship him to be this genius. You're giving this dude exactly what he wanted. It irritates me every time when they say that. Oh, he's brilliant. He's this. He's God. He's everything. He's la la la. That's what he wants. And he's getting everything. He's loving every bit and he's eating all this stuff up. And it frustrates me about some of these individuals on these high profile TV shows and stuff like that and news outlets is they constantly give these sick, deprived people like this. And again, he's innocent until proven guilty. I get it. But people like this individual, if he is found guilty, they give them a platform. They give them movies and they write their autobiographies like Bryan's professor, Catherine Ramsland. And they, give him all these interviews and Netflix shows. And Bryan, that's what all he wants. He feels like he's been ignored a lot of times in society. And now he's getting all this attention. He has all these people calling him brilliant and genius and mastermind and all these things. And it's just, What it does is it breeds an incentive in other individuals who have the sick mind like him, if he is to be found guilty of these crimes. It just encourages other people like him to do and to emulate what he is doing. It frustrates me, guys, when I hear that all the time. Sorry, I had to go on that venting rampage right there.
Very interesting.
He applied for an internship with the Pullman Police Department. He said he wanted to learn about rural law enforcement.
So now that we're revisiting a lot of the weird, eerie things about the family, his background, I wanted to do a video that kind of includes all that so we can have it in one area. So I thought, let's revisit the disturbing information that we've heard about the sister who wrote the poem. Because then when you start putting all these pieces together, you start to see a pattern with some of these individuals. The mother of Bryan Kohberger, the 28-year-old man arrested in connection with the university, sent a letter to her local Pennsylvania paper last summer that included a poem, The Uvalde School Massacre. And I noticed like they like to be in the newspaper a lot because this is the second newspaper article the mom sent. But this time, at least she's showing empathy for the children involved. That I think is sweet. But it seems like they interject themselves a lot in these tragedies. Quite interesting. The poem is written by Kohberger's sister, Melissa Kohberger. So wow, we're seeing all the different sisters. So we saw Ann Kohberger. Was that her name? The sister Ann Kohberger? Let me go back and see what that lady's name was. Because he has two sisters. So she's named after her mom. Yeah, Amanda Kohberger. So we saw the video clippings from Amanda Kohberger, who played in the horror film. Now we're seeing a poem that was written by Bryan's other sister, Melissa Kohberger, a mental health therapist in New Jersey. Well, she should have gave her brother some mental health therapy, okay? Did she see the signs, y'all? Did she see the signs? She's a therapist, but I wonder if she's seeing the signs of her brother. I'm just saying. Guys, I think they had to have seen something off about their brother. I just feel they had to see something. But a lot of times people want to ignore it. They'll say, oh, that's just Bryan being Bryan, whatever. They had to have seen this guy didn't have one girlfriend. So I'm pretty sure those parents were like, maybe Bryan is going through, his growing spout or whatever. But they should have saw something was off about that. I don't know, guys. What do you guys think? The suspect's mother, Mary Ann Kohberger, 62, of Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, wrote a letter to the Ponoco Record that was published on June, less than 2 weeks after the Uvalde school shooting at an elementary school that left 17 students and 2 teachers unalive. That's so sad. As I sat this morning reeling from yet another school shooting, I found myself wrestling with which actions need to be taken to stop all the madness, Kohberger wrote. What is the answer? Gun control measures? Mental health intervention? Which I find is so sad because isn't this ironic? The mom here and the sister speaking out against these massacres, and then their son is now accused of one. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. This family here is so ironic. I tell you, all the coincidence. Then I received a message from my daughter who works as a mental health therapist in New Jersey. And he should have got some counseling from his sister, y'all. What y'all think? He should have got some counseling. She shared a poem she had written while in the greatest depths of despair. It shook me to my core, and I felt the need to share it. I wonder what Bryan felt when he was seeing all these massacres. Was he enjoying it, trying to figure out what these other people were doing and how they did it? If he was guilty, again, he's innocent, they'll prove him guilty. But I'm just saying, too much things are adding up. Okay. The poem by 31-year-old Melissa Kohberger reads, okay, so Melissa Kohberger is Bryan's older sister because she's 31. Bereft of their laughter, there is now not a sound. As we lower our children into the ground, small hands and feet buried 6 feet deep into the earth of the world that felt them. Okay, guys, I don't know what it is, but every time I read that poem, it gives me the creeps, okay? I know the sister meant well. I understand that she meant good intentions. But just having to have the parents picture their child that they love being buried 6 feet, lowering their children to the ground. This sounds very decrepit and insensitive and very I can't even find the words. To me, that just the words that she chose for this poem, it seems very decrepit, cold, and insensitive. I just felt she could have chose different words. Like, why would you want to say we lower our children into the ground? It sounds like a horror movie. Small hands and feet buried 6 feet deep into the earth of the world that failed them. I'm sorry, that to me does not sound like an empathetic, kind, loving poem. It sounds something very cold and decrepit. Like, seriously, do you want to hear a poem about your kid being buried 6 feet under the ground, cold, small hands, small feet, kids being buried? Like, I'm sorry. This sounds like a horror movie or something. I feel like I'm not getting on the sister. The sister and the families have nothing to do with what Bryan did. But I'm just saying some of the words that she chose for this poem, if I were a parent reading that, I would be mortified by that. I'm just saying. I'm just on an outsider person looking in, looking at the poem. And I'm trying to look at it in different angles. And I'm like, the words that she chose to me was very insensitive. I'm pretty sure she meant well, but it gives me the creeps reading that. And I get that's what happened in this tragedy, but I'm just saying she could have used different words. Like, for example, children that could have been full of so much promise and so much dreams, so much hope for their life that would be seen. However, hope was taken on that very tragic day when gun violence paved the way. Something like that, but not saying these decrepit words, having these parents have to visualize their children ripped from them, having to be buried 6 feet under. It's like, come on, I'm sorry. I'm like, some of the things, I'm just saying, as you read stuff like this just makes me see some of the weird things going on in that family. I'm just saying, not to say anything's wrong with the sister and mother and all that, but when you start putting pieces together, you start questioning things. Okay? For me, just for me. I know some of y'all might say there's nothing wrong with the poem, but I'm just giving you my personal opinion. I would love to hear your perspective because I'm pretty sure you have a whole different perspective of it. But I'm just saying, on the outside looking in, had I never even heard of Bryan, let's just say that, and Bryan was not a suspect in this, and I happened to read this poem in a newspaper about what happened in Texas, I would not take a liking to that and look at that in a positive light. I just feel like the choice of words were not sensitive or shown empathy for the tragedy. It just sounds kind of, I can't even find the right word. It's just, it sounds very cold and decrepit to have a parent have to visualize their child being buried like that. Just the way she said it. Like, would you read that kind of poem in a funeral? I don't think so. You want to try to think of the positive and just try to bring hope to the family. And this just sounds very depressing and very sad because now you're bringing the parents in a dark place where they have to visualize. You're creating an image in that parent's mind to have to remind them of where their children are now. I would try to think of the positive and try to find a way to bring change and hope and uplift the family. But when you do poems like this, it brings and breeds depression because they're having to visualize, and it makes you want to cry. Like, you literally read that and you're not thinking of ways to change it. You're thinking of just how sad it is and just crying. And I don't know. I'm just saying. That's just I'm just using my opinion, you guys. Okay, I'm not the only one. Okay, I can see some people feel me because some people was telling me, girl, you overdoing it, you're overreacting. I'm just saying, even if Bryan was never heard of and I was just a person reading this article or in the newspaper, I would have not really had a positive looking on that. I'm just saying, she could have used some better words. You saw my example. Use my example and then versus hers. Just, you know what I mean? So Julie, she gets me. She said the poem is ghoulish. Okay, good. I'm not the only one. I agree. She could have used better words. Okay, I'm not the only one. Thank God. I was like, I feel like I don't want to be overreacting because I know a lot of people are coming for this guy. But I'm just on the outside looking in. Beautiful revision of the poem that could have been as Queen of Squire. Okay, you get me then. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Using guilt and fear to enact her political agenda. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It seems like a lot of the family members of Bryan interjected themselves in these type of tragedies, these horrendous tragedies. And I'm just wondering how maybe Bryan, I don't know what was going on in that household. Who knows? Maybe there was a breeding ground of accepting these type of conduct to the point where he felt okay to embrace that dark, sinister side of him and just kept, growing it and throughout his life to the point where he started studying it. I really want to know what's going on in that household. I just have a little bit of questions, in my mind, the more information that comes out. Okay, Lisa, you get me too. She said, you're not overreacting. I just see the point she was making when she read the whole poem. Yeah, I see the point she was making, Alyssa. I know what she's trying to do, but would you want that poem read at a kid's funeral? I'm just saying. I know she wasn't going to read this one at the funeral, but it didn't work. I know her intention, and I get her. She had a good intention, but for me, I didn't take too well to it. But that's just me. Bryan Kohberger. Oh, we already know he was taken into custody. Okay, there's nothing else new in this article. I thought they would have something new. Guys, guess what? So we have been talking about some of the similarities that Bryan Kohberger had with the BTK killer that I talked about in some prior articles. And a lot of these news outlets were speculating and wondering and guessing, did Bryan speak to BTK? He didn't. BTK came out and he responded, y'all. Dennis Radar responded. Okay, so let's read the article that Dennis Radar responded. What was his response? But Bryan didn't have to speak to BTK to develop or adopt some of Dennis Radar's patterns in the things that he done. It's plastered all over the place. And he took the class with Catherine Ramsland, who wrote the autobiography of the BTK killer. All Bryan really had to do was just go online, research BTK, whatever information was taught in his class. He learned pretty much in-depth information about BTK. And all he had to do was read his professor's book that she wrote, the autobiography. So I don't feel like Bryan really had the necessity to speak to BTK directly, but let's hear what Mr. Dennis Radar said, because there has been a lot of speculation that they said, well, there could have been a possible communication between Bryan and Dennis. And that was a question that everybody wanted to know. So Dennis answered that for us. Dennis Radar, BTK killer, says he did not speak to Bryan Kohberger. The BTK killer has axed rumors he was in contact with the accused quadruple killer, Bryan Kohberger. He said no on Kohberger all around. The convicted serial killer, whose real name is Dennis Radar, told TMZ in response to a query about whether he connected with the 28-year-old accused murder of 4 college students in Moscow. Kohberger, who was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania, had previously studied under the forensic psychologist and true crime writer Catherine Ramsland while attending DeSales University in Central Valley, Pennsylvania. Ramsland, the author of 69 books, wrote a headline making about the BTK bind, torture, kill, in collaboration with her subject, who is currently serving 10 life sentences for slaughtering 10 people in Wichita, Kansas, from 1974 to 1991. Radar had mocked police for years with letters and newspaper articles until the cold-blooded murderer was finally nabbed in 2005. Radar's estranged daughter, Carrie Racine, told News Nation that she was pretty shocked to learn that there was potentially a connection to my father. She suggested that her father could have contacted or had an influence on Kohberger, considering that Ramsland has been his teacher. I think during that class, Bryan learned a very extensive amount of BTK, because I'm pretty sure Catherine taught extensively about BTK when she was giving her demonstrations, because she studied him in depthly and interviewed him and so forth. So I'm pretty sure Bryan learned all the intricacies about Mr. BTK, because I can see some of the patterns in what he chose in this tragedy, from the stalking and choosing his victim, like how he just latched on to whoever he saw. He met them somewhere and literally made that decision that he was going to unalive them. And then when he did that, he started stalking them just like BTK did. He even like how BTK spared the dog. And then even during BTK's first killing, he only killed 4 victims. It just seems like too many coincidences there. And Bryan was 28 and BTK was 28 when he first committed his. And then it's just too many weird coincidences. It seems like he really was kind of adopting some of the patterns of different serial killers that he latched onto or otherwise connected with. And I think this tragedy had a lot to do with some sick things, like, for example, physical gratification, his animosity towards women, his animosity towards the men who could attract these type of women. A lot of different things going on in this man's mind. But at the end of the day, it has to do with his perverted, sick mind. I'm just saying, in my opinion. Again, he's innocent until proven guilty. But based on what I've seen, my opinion is I think he's guilty. I'm just going to go with my personal opinion, and I am entitled to have an opinion. Okay. Just saying. She suggested that her father could have contacted or had influence on Kohberger, considering Ramsland has been his teacher. Radar admitted that this theory wasn't at all that far-fetched. And here, just look at this guy. If you just look at his face from the bottom, you don't have to look at the top. Here, it looks like it's a small, faint smile, like a sense of satisfaction. And here he just looks completely soulless. It's like he has and lacks any soul. Look at this guy's eyes. He's not even here. I mean, where is he? Where is he? Because he's not here. I would pay $1 million to know what's in that dude's head. He must be very cold and callous. He's not even sorry for what he did. What a sick guy. But the BT killer said he never spoke to Bryan. So we already got that answer for us. Bryan Kohberger at his extradition hearing, this is where he was. Look at this sick guy. And then here we see Mr. Arrogant. BTK killer was a whole clown, y'all. Over here writing news outlets and all that so he could get his name out there. He was doing too much. He named himself. Who is that arrogant to literally name themselves? I am BTK. Call me BTK. Who does that? I'm done with him too. Dennis Radar was arrested in 2005. I had thought someone may have studied me. That's what he told TMZ. He's so arrogant. So TMZ reached out to him, right? And they're like, there was this guy who was arrested for, he's alleged to have unalived 4 college students. Did you speak with him? He's like, no. And then he's like, well, he studied you in school. And then BTK says, I thought someone may have studied me. So arrogant. These people I'm done. Oh, wow. The nerve. See, these outlets need to stop giving these people, boosting these people's egos, because that's what he's doing, boosting BTK's ego. Oh, wow, these people were in class studying me. Wow. The killer praised Idaho law enforcement for capturing the suspect, but went on to whine to the outlet about his hardships. So he has the audacity to praise law enforcement for catching Bryan. I'm done. These serial killers, y'all. Good job, law enforcement, for catching this serial killer. I'm also a serial killer also. Well, Bryan's not a serial killer. He's accused of unaliving 4 individuals in one tragedy, but still, I mean, he would have went on to be one if he was not caught. And if he's found guilty, but we shall see. Bryan. Okay, so Dennis is whining. Instead of talking about whether he spoke to Bryan, after he says no, then he starts saying, my family doesn't communicate with me at all. I love them all very much. It would be happy if one did. Wow. He only cared about himself, y'all. Only cared about himself. So at least we have an answer. But again, I don't think, you guys, that Bryan really needed to reach out to BTK. What's the need? There is a ton of information about BTK out there. All you have to do is just Google him on YouTube. But Bryan had the advantage of being lectured by Catherine Ramsland, who knew about BTK inside and out and literally wrote his autobiography. So, what do you think happened in that class? Bryan was taught all the different intricate details of BTK. So, he already knew everything. Why reach out to BTK when he already knows everything? He did that sick little survey of his that he used to try to go into the mind of other people so he could figure out his own sick method. That's what I think, in my opinion. And I get that other, students, when they write their thesis papers, they do these different research papers. But some of the students are coming out saying they wouldn't go that far with what Bryan did. They wouldn't go and try to reach out to serial killers or whatever, or people who unalive people, or criminals themselves, and try to figure out what they did in their method. So there's a lot of conflicting information out there, but some of the students said what Bryan was doing went way too far and not consistent with what they would do. So I found that was interesting. But I also wanted to talk to you guys about this Elliot Rodger, because now the more I see Elliot Rodger, it's kind of like you see some similarities to Elliot Rodger. And I feel as though if we look at Elliot Rodger, we can see a pattern between the two. It seems like Bryan is somewhat similar has the similar mindset of Elliot. He tried so much to be the smartest person in the room. He always tries to explain things based upon his other classmates in a complex way. He'll take a simple topic or subject matter that any of us can explain in a very simple way, and he tries to communicate it in the most difficult, advanced way or complicated way to make him sound like a complete genius. So he tries to make him appear more intelligent than he probably really is, to be honest. He's just more of an internal narcissist. But just looking at that, also seeing his pattern with different women based upon the allegations out there. There's women that allege that he was bullied by girls in high school and made fun of because of his weight. And there's women from the bar that said he was creepy and made creepy comments and was asking these ladies if they had people with them or if they were home alone, or where they lived at, just weird, creepy stuff. So bad that the bar owner, the owner that owned the bar, he had to have notes in his drawer just to remind him that this guy makes creepy comments, and he had to literally confront Bryan. So as I hear that, and then it seems like Bryan had this obsession with sorority girls because he kept stalking these sorority girls, similar to Elliot. I mean, Elliot on his times off would go around to different sorority houses and stalk these different sorority girls, and he would say mean comments to them, and because he was so angry because he couldn't have them and they didn't want him. But in reality, he was blaming them, saying, you deprived me of love and you deprived me of the physical gratification that I long for. When in reality, these type of individuals, they blame everyone else instead of looking within themselves and trying to better improve themselves. So I wanted to share with you the last YouTube video of Elliot, because I'm starting to think maybe this was similar to the mindset of Bryan. Let's see what you guys think after you hear from Mr. Elliot.
Hi, Elliot Rodger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity, against all of you. For the last 8 years of my life, ever since I've hit puberty, I've been forced to endure an existence of loneliness, rejection, and unfulfilled desires, all because girls have never been attracted to me. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. I'm 22 years old and I'm still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl. I've been through college for 2.5 years, more than that actually, and I'm still a virgin. It has been very torturous. College is the time when everyone experiences those things such as sex and fun, and and pleasure. But in those years, I've had to rot in loneliness. It's not fair. You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it. It's an injustice, a crime, because I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy. And yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men instead of me, the supreme gentleman. I will punish all of you for it. On the day of retribution, I am going to enter the hottest sorority house of UCSB. And I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut I see inside there. All those girls that I've desired so much, they would have all rejected me and looked down upon me as an inferior man if I ever made a sexual advance towards them, while they throw themselves at these obnoxious brutes. I'll take great pleasure in slaughtering all of you. You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one, the true alpha male. Yes. After I've annihilated every single girl in the sorority house, I'll take to the streets of Isla Vista and slay every single person I see there. All those popular kids who live such lives of hedonistic pleasure while I've had to rot in loneliness for all these years. They've all looked down upon me every time I tried to go out and join them. They've all treated me like a mouse. Well, now I will be a god compared to you. You will all be animals. You are animals, and I will slaughter you like animals. I'll be a god, exacting my retribution on all those who deserve it. And you do deserve it, just for the crime of living a better life than me. All you popular kids, you've never accepted me. And now you'll all pay for it. And girls, all I've ever wanted was to love you and to be loved by you. I've wanted a girlfriend. I've wanted sex. I've wanted love, affection, adoration. But you think I'm unworthy of it. That's a crime that can never be forgiven. If I can't have you, girls, I will destroy you. You denied me a happy life. And in turn, I will deny all of you life. It's only fair. I hate all of you. Humanity is a disgusting, wretched, depraved species. If I had it in my power, I would stop at nothing to reduce every single one of you to mountains of skulls and rivers of blood.
So you get the point. There are the community out there like Elliot Rodger. Some of them pay homage to this guy. Literally, they commit crimes in his name. It's sick. But some of the key words that you heard from him is that he had this deep animosity towards sorority girls in particular. And he was talking to women like he said, you deprived me of the love and the affection and the gratification and all these things. And that is the kind of mindset of an incel. And the more people come out and talk about Bryan, I start to think, what if that was the similar mindset of Bryan? What if there was times this guy never slept at night? Seems like he had a pretty stressful, unhappy life. Staying up all night, obsessing over the fact that he can't even seem to get a girlfriend or get the love and the affection from women. And it seems as though it started in high school and all the way up to adulthood, where he can't seem to even attract women, but he doesn't realize, like, as you can see, Elliot, they have these grandiose, unrealistic, supreme being mentalities where they think that they are superior to others. And so what they end up doing is they end up talking down to these women. They can't emotionally connect to the women, and they elevate themselves up to be superior to the women. So when they end up interacting with these women, the women find them to be repulsive. And hearing some of the different women that have spoke about Bryan, from, for example, the young lady in the classroom who stormed out emotionally because Bryan spoke down to her, as if he was superior to her. Or the young lady who alleged that during a Tinder date, he kept filling on her and was very awkward and saying very inappropriate things on a first date, talking about how she has birthing hips or whatever. He was just kind of looking at her more in a physical way instead of really trying to connect with her mind and getting to know her as an individual, but more so he was looking at her for physical gratification. Or from the other girls who found him to make creepy comments to them at the bars. It just seemed as though there's just too many women coming out saying that this guy was a creep. So looking at the different comments from the women, it creates a pattern that was similar to Elliot Rodgers. That Bryan probably blamed women for his misery, blamed women for the repeated rejections that he has had. And so he developed this hatred inside, and he probably had these sick, sinister thoughts in his mind and thought going to school, he could learn and study himself. But the more he studied it, it became less satisfactory to him, to the point where he started to obsess over the idea of seeking revenge on these individuals who he blamed for his own misery. And I'm starting to feel like that survey that he did, it was as if he was trying to gain information and knowledge that could help him carry out this sick revenge. And I feel as though whatever encounter he had with these young ladies, whether it was at the Mad Greek restaurant where two of them worked, Maddie and Zana worked, or at a coffee shop or whatever, when he saw them, he locked eyes, because one of the questions he had in the survey was very telling to me. When he said, on the survey, he said, what made you choose your victim? And think about BTK, for example. BTK, all he did was just see someone randomly and be like, that's going to be my next victim. That's what I think Bryan did. I think whoever or how many of these girls he saw at some whatever encounter, because they go to bars too. So, and Bryan goes to bars based upon the indications from the bar owner who said that Bryan frequented his bar. So we can at least say that Bryan goes to bars. He might have gone to a bar in Idaho. These young ladies go to bars. In fact, the last night of their life, at least Kaylee and Maddie had gone to a bar. So who knows if maybe one of the nights after the sorority parties, they go to a bar, and then guess who they see there? Mr. Bryan, because Bryan never sleeps, apparently. He sees them, locks eyes with them, and says that those are going to be my victims. Because think about it. This man had a survey months before he identified his victim. He asked these criminals various questions, from what made them choose their victims? What was the very characteristics? What weapons, or how they choose their method? All the things, how to make you feel, all this stuff, right? It's as if he was building up to it. Once he learned all this information from his survey, then he starts carrying it out. When he gets to the Washington State University, he starts looking for his victim, because I think he was planning this. And then he locks eyes with one or however many of these girls that were unalived. And he was like, that's going to be my victim. Once he chose that victim, he started the stalking stage. Starting, I think it's at least from August. Then he starts researching them, figuring out, and it's so easy to do this, guys. All you got to do, go on the Idaho University website, look up their, also figure out what their names are. Of course, they're popular girls, so that's easy to figure out. Search them on Instagram, search them on TikTok. We all did that. It was easy to find their profiles. So how much more was it easy for Bryan to find their profiles? They post every nook and cranny of their life, from every step, what they're doing, where their parties are. It's so easy to find out everything about them online. Once he figures that stuff out, they live close to the university. Easy for him to follow them home. Then now he starts studying their routine, figuring out everything about them, from what they do, from the different parties, what time they go to bed, all that stuff. Once he figured out all his information, he goes and orders his knife, in my opinion, from a private seller. This guy's smart. He didn't order it from the dealer themselves because he already knows all the things that the investigators and the FBI and the law enforcement is going to do. That's why the law enforcement could not find where he purchased that knife. They went to the different dealers and all of them said, no, Bryan Kohberger bought a knife from us, because he knew better. He purchased that knife from a private seller. Yeah. In my opinion. And then after doing that, he starts making his plan. He even researched the type of knife he could use, so that he can ensure it was a good grip, so that hopefully it didn't slip. This man studied this, guys. It took him several months. You can tell, because he stalked these poor kids for several months at least, dating back to August. Okay. After he does that and he commits the killings, this guy is an OCD, right? He really made sure he scrubbed clean everything, and he missed one delicate part, which was that little latch area. Okay. Missed that one little spot. Right. So I'm starting to think, as we're hearing more about this guy, now I'm starting to see that leaving that knife sheath was on accident, because we keep hearing about how different details, how the guy speeds off, right? He picked his victims, but he sped off and then he came back several hours later. I think it's because he was contemplating whether he should go back in. He beat himself up to the core because he's an OCD perfectionist. And he was like, man, how can I forget this? How could I? He's beat himself up wondering, should he go back in? He realized it's not even worth it. So he leaves. The guy didn't sleep. He went home cleaning up, trying to clean up precisely himself, went to go get some coffee because he was tired. Then he drove out into the wilderness in Idaho to stash that knife, because the cell phone pings show that he drove out in the middle of nowhere in Idaho, which I believe the authorities are over there searching for that knife, because that's likely where he stashed it. And then when he travels on he cleans that car every inch and nook and cranny, and then utilizes surgical gloves to wear to different areas. This guy was being extremely precise, which now leads me to believe that leaving that sheath was no longer, I thought, was on purpose. I'm changing my conclusion to now believe that it was accidental, because of the subsequent behavior he did to meticulously clean every inch and nook and cranny of that car. Then notice the contrary condition of the car when he drives to Pennsylvania. The car all of a sudden is extremely dirty, completely contrary to what he did prior to that, because it appears as though the FBI was watching this guy for quite some time. I'm thinking, they're not telling us everything. You have to understand something about the FBI. They're not going to tell you everything, so you can't take their word. It's quite evident, because from the very beginning, they lied to us, because from the beginning, they told us that everybody in the house was asleep, when now we're reading the probable cause affidavit and we're finding the contrary. So they don't tell us the truth all the time. So you can't take everything that they say for face value. What I think is, on the 29th, when they discovered this to be the guy, they started watching him from then on. That's when they figured out he started cleaning that car. But when he travels to Pennsylvania, he knows it's going to be a long trip. So he makes sure his car is extremely dirty. He doesn't clean it that way, at least on the exterior side, because he wants it to be extremely dirty, because he doesn't want any of the patrol officers to really kind of pay attention to his car, because he knows everybody and their mother is looking for a white Hyundai Elantra. Okay? It's been announced to the world that the possible car that may be involved, that was seen speeding away from the crime scene, is a white Hyundai Elantra. So what does he do? He wants to be incognito. So that car, to me, you have to admit, guys, the car was unusually way too dirty. I get that. Okay, I get that when you travel, your car gets some dirt in while you're traveling. But that car was dirty to an extreme. I have had a white car before, okay, for many years. And never has my car, and there's times I don't watch it for maybe a week or 2 or 3, but my car's never been that dirty, like that extremely dirty. I've had a white car for 10 years, and in the 10 years that I've owned it, even on the weeks I didn't clean it, it never has been that extremely dirty, which is why I believe this guy purposely wanted it to be very, very kind of dirty to the point where it's discolored, because he knew he was going to take a long trip. He knew his car was going to be a subject where everybody's going to be looking for, because everybody and their mother is looking for a white Hyundai Elantra. So he wanted to be incognito, because look how contrary his behavior is. They said he washed that car every inch, every nook and cranny, and all of a sudden now it's extremely dirty. It was like very noticeably dirty. And that kind of stood out for me, because I've owned a white car for about 10 years. And in all the 10 years I've had it, even on the days when it was dirty, it was never that dirty. It's like he was trying to be incognito because he didn't want to stand out. I'm just saying. Okay. And then also noticing the meticulous steps he takes when he gets to his parents' house. How he waits until 4 a.m. to take the trash out. Isn't that odd? Come on now, 4 a.m. every night. Then he wears surgical gloves to take the bag to not his parents' garbage can, but to his neighbor's garbage can. It's the behavior for me. Now, when you start putting all these little pieces together, you start to realize, okay, this guy was trying to get away with the crime. He was trying to be very meticulous, which means he did carelessly leave the sheaf at the house. When you look at everything together, and he was beating himself all that time, which is why he was not sleeping, drinking the coffee. Everybody in the classroom said the guy was stressed out. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He had bags under his eyes. He just looked a hot mess, because he kept beating himself up, given his OCD nature, that he messed up after just carefully thinking about this whole crime and how he could commit the most perfect crime, leaving no DNA. He makes the meticulous mistake of he makes the careless mistake of leaving the sheaf. And what really stood out to me is out of this entire sheaf, only there's a small speck of DNA left on the satch, or the little buckle thing. Come on, guys. He cleaned that thing inside out and missed a spot. Which makes me realize leaving the sheaf was accidental. Because when you put all the different pieces together, you can see all the subsequent behavior he took to try to avoid accountability. Even to the point where he drove out in the wilderness somewhere, where the cell phone pings discovered that this guy hid that knife somewhere in the middle of Idaho somewhere. Allegedly. And this is all just my opinion and theories that I'm coming up with. None of it is factual. It's just opinions. But guys, there is a lot of information heating up about this case. People, and I want to know if you guys think this is true. I haven't really shared this information because I didn't know if it was credible. But now that New York Post and other people are reporting on it, it might have some truth to it. I wonder what you think. But we talked about Reddit before, but now people are talking about this Facebook user. People think it might have been Bryan. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm personally not convinced. But I thought, hey, I'll read this article to you. You let me know if you think the guy is Bryan Kohberger, hiding under an alias or a fake name. A lot of people in this Facebook profile thought it was Bryan, and they reported it to the FBI. But again, I don't know. Who knows? Let's read the article and see what you think. Idaho murder suspect Bryan Kohberger discussed key details of the case in the Facebook group Online Sleuths. Now, they think it's real Bryan, even this New York Post. Well, who knows? They say accused Idaho killer Bryan reportedly used alias to discuss the case in social media discussion groups. One of them we thought was the Reddit group. That was the first group we thought, the Inside Looking. Then there was another one, Chan4, that we talked about. Now they're saying there's a Facebook fake username he used. But I'm not convinced about this one. I wonder if you are. Online sleuths are speculating about whether accused Idaho killer Bryan used an alias to discuss the case in social media discussion groups. A Facebook user with the name Papa Roger made numerous comments in a group about the savage murders of 4 University Idaho students, even noting key details of the crime. Jennifer, a former FBI agent, said she found one of the comments particularly interesting. Now, guys, okay, we've got former FBI agents chiming in on this. Now, that's where I can say there might be some interesting things to look at in relation to this Facebook profile, because FBI agents are thinking some of the comments are suspicious and may be associated with Bryan. Now I'm a little bit persuaded. Let's see what she has to say. She said, November screenshot of one of the Papa Rogers posts, which read, of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. Oh my gosh, how did he know about the sheath? This was in November. None of us knew that he left his sheath back in November. That has to be him, guys, because none of us knew about him leaving a sheath until the probable cause arrest affidavit was released. And that was just a couple days ago. That was him, guys. I'm convinced. Nobody in this entire country knew about the sheath except for the FBI, the investigators, and the killer. Wow. Okay, guys, I'm convinced. I don't know. Let's keep reading, though. Let's read that again. I got to read that again. Let's back this up. Jennifer, a former FBI agent, said she found one of the comments particularly interesting, tweeting a November screenshot of one of Papa Rogers' posts, which read, of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. Wow. How did he know that? Nobody knew that he left anything at the crime scene. That is telling, guys. These different social media individuals out here, from Inside Looking to the individual on Channel 4 and now Papa Roger, is sounding real suspicious to me. Y'all let me know what you think. Let's keep reading. Authorities did find a knife sheath at the murder scene, but its existence was not made public until after Kohberger's arrest last week. See, Bryan gives me that vibe. He's similar to BTK. He's very arrogant. He wants credit for his sick work, okay, like BTK. And he wasn't getting the attention he wanted because all of us online people were talking about different people, from Jack to Kerr, the other Jack, all the people. And nobody was trying to acknowledge the credibility of Mr. Bryan. So what does he do? He obsesses about this case. He goes on all these different social media profiles, from Facebook to Inside Looking to Channel 4 to Reddit, all these things to try to interject himself in the crime through these online social media outlets. It's sick. What do you guys think? I mean, again, this is all out allegedly, and none of us can prove that it's him, but the FBI will be able to, if they are able to, if they look more into it. I hope they do, because if this really is Bryan, it's going to be found on his computer and they can look up the IP address and everything. And if it's him, man, he's really starting to look like Dennis Radar, because Dennis Radar would do something like this. When a Twitter user commented that, I just find it hard to believe he would leave a digital trail that's incriminating. But Bryan apparently is not that smart as we thought he was, okay? Jennifer responded, he drove his own car, which was dumb. Number one, dumb move. 2, he carried his phone. Number 2, dumb choice. Number 3, didn't clip in his sheath tight enough. That's number 3, dumb decision. So I do believe he could leave a digital trail. He was a hot mess. Intelligence with no common sense equals a criminal bound to be caught. I am 100% in agreement with what this former FBI agent has said. Look at all the dumb things he did, guys. He drove his own car. Number 1, that was dumb. He knew mommy and daddy bought that car. Why drive your very car that could be identified? And the fact that it has unique characteristics because it doesn't have the front license plate consistent with Pennsylvania cars that are registered in Pennsylvania, because cars in Pennsylvania are not required to have front license plates. Dumb, right? And he knew he couldn't get rid of that car because his mommy and daddy bought it, and he would be a big hot water if he did that. Second dumb choice. He carried his freaking phone, and then he had the audacity. The guy, see, some of these people who are arrogant like this and they think they're smarter than everybody else, they end up making the most dumb moves. He carries his phone. Like, this is the problem with modern society. People cannot live without their phone. They have a codependency on their phone. And he thinks by just turning his phone off for that one little moment in time, the criminal time, makes him innocent. No, it actually makes it more obvious that he was trying to cover up his location. He had a consciousness of guilt, and a jury is not dumb. They're going to see that. It's very obvious because that's the only time in which he cannot be tracked during all those several months. Yeah. A jury's going to see through that. Then number 3, he didn't clip his sheath tight enough. Dumb. And then she forgot to mention, guys, that Bryan didn't turn his phone off during the 12 occasions he went to stalk these people. Bryan didn't turn his phone off around 9 when he went back to the crime scene. Okay, dummy. Bryan didn't turn his phone off when he went to go stash the knife. There is a long list of dumb choices this guy makes. So when you start looking at all the dumb choices, it's not far-fetched that he would have incriminated himself by making these fake profiles, which could then be tracked back when the FBI does their further digging into his electronics. This guy literally buried himself, guys. Wow. An administrator of the University of Idaho Murders Facebook discussion group wrote that Papa Roger argued incessantly with people and said some really creepy stuff. Wow, a lot of people. And look how this house literally bled from the outside. That is a horrific crime. Horrific. The user known as Papa Roger eerily guessed details of the crime and the crime scene. Jennifer says, I have followed Papa Roger comments with intrigue. And she's an FBI agent, y'all. So okay, think about it. If a former FBI agent is following this guy's comments online, how much more do you think the actual current FBI agents are all researching this Papa Murphy guy, the inside looking guy, the Chan 4 account to see if they're associated with Mr. Bryan? And they have already seized all of his electronics. So if it was Bryan, we will find out during the trial because you better believe they're going to present all this evidence in the trial. It's going to be a very long, drawn out. A lot of technology and electronics are going to be used to show the circumstantial connections to this case if he was dumb enough to be Papa Roger and all these other people he was pretending to be, if it is him. Look at this. It's funny. She said this comment was of particular interest after the release of the PCA, probable cause affidavit. The comments just seemed to hit home. Of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. See, and I really believe it's Bryan. You know why? Because after Bryan made that rookie move, because he comes off as an OCD. His aunts even state that when they said he was OCD about his vegan diet. So that kind of OCD nature transfers into other things. So he's a perfectionist and he wanted to commit the most perfect crime. So when he forgot that sheath, now I'm starting to think that was what happened based upon looking at all the different pieces of evidence in his subsequent behavior. When he forgot the sheath, he comes off as a type of person that would have obsessed about it, would have beat himself up about it, was hyperly stressed about that. And he was stressed and stressed. That's why he wasn't sleeping. He was like, man, I don't know where the sheath is. I hope I didn't leave it in the house. Oh my God, I hope they didn't find that sheath. Oh, no, right? So when if this is him and he's saying, oh, they must have found the sheath, then he's like, oh, shoot. He's guessing if they found that sheath he forgot. That's really telling. Because no one else knew that. So the only person that would have known that would have been the authorities or the killer. That's the only, because we just found out about that. Very, very eerie, guys. She noted he was removed the night before Kohberger's arrest. created another Facebook group, and that no one had heard from him since the arrest. And that's very true. These 3 different profiles that we've been talking about, Chan 4, Inside Looking, and now Papa Roger, we haven't heard from them since the arrest. That's suspicious. If it was somebody else, they'd still be passionately talking about this case right now. They've been incognito ever since. Comments made on Reddit by user Inside Looking also led to speculation that could have been made by Kohberger, the Daily reported. One post read, "Killer parked behind the house, approached property through tree line, entered sliding door and left it open, committed murders and exited sliding door." Well, that's exactly what happened. One knife, according to the coroner's statement. Time of murder approximately 3:20 to 3:40 a.m. Now, this part they got wrong because we know now it was 4 o'clock to 4:20 a.m. But who knows? He might have tried to put wrong information to try to throw people off that it wasn't him. Because that's what I noticed from the Chan 4 comment. He said stuff that wasn't accurate and some stuff that was accurate. For example, saying that the exact location where he would be found, which was he was found in Pennsylvania. So I feel like maybe he tried to throw things off to make some inaccuracies in these posts to not be too suspicious. But you let me know. But the estimation of time seems pretty much on point because they say he was in there for approximately 15 to 25 minutes. I'm not sure the exact time, but the last comment I read, they said it was about 15 minutes. But from the affidavit, it seems like about 25 minutes he was in there. So somewhere around the same accurate estimation. But that's interesting, guys. They said an affidavit filed in the case detailed one of the victim's roommates, Dylan, saw a man approach the home's sliding door, and there were multiple sightings of the suspect's vehicle near the house between 3:29 and 4:20 a.m. So, wow, have you guys heard about this the University of Idaho murders case discussion? Papa Roger. I want to look. Let me see if I can find it. I want to look at more of his posts because there was some disturbing. Or you know who also talked about these posts was Crime Circus. We might have to go to Crime Circus video because he gave us some of the summaries, y'all. Papa Roger. Or he got rid of that too. University of Idaho murders case discussion. University. Instead of wasting my time doing that, let's go to lovely. I love Crime Circus, y'all. Crime Circus is on point. He gives us everything, and you don't have to worry about looking for it yourself. I'm just saying it saves us time. Because he did a little quick video on this, and I didn't report on it because at first I didn't really think it was, credible at the point. I was like, I don't know, guys. I'm not really believing it that it's him.
Recordings just got better.
So now I'm starting to be convinced based upon what the FBI agent showed us that one. So let's take a look at some of these other posts that he did in the Papa Murphy guys and see what you guys think. Do you think it's him? Do you not think it's him? I'm interested in what you guys think. So here is this other post that Mr. Papa Roger said. He said, a knife is a very risky weapon. If you know you are going to murder 4 people, do we think the killer also had another weapon, such as a stun gun or other knife? Guys, and I'm starting to wonder, because remember I was telling you something about the fact that none of these people had blood-curdling screams. Something's not right about that. If you're being stabbed, you're going to act wild, you're going to run. So I'm starting to think he had another weapon, guys. I just think that the authorities haven't told us the full details because, again, they're under the gag order. They're not allowed to give us all the details. All they can give us is the bare minimum of what they put in that probable cause affidavit. And the fact that this story doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't make sense. A lot of people are saying this, that these individuals were stabbed to death and nobody screamed. They just heard a whimper. I'm starting to think he had a stun gun. I'm starting to think, because when officers use the stun guns or whatever, or those taser guns or whatever, well, but that would have been loud. You would have heard that. I'm trying to think, did he have some other weapon that could have sedated these people or something? Because how do you not scream when you're getting stabbed? Anybody, will tell you when somebody gets stabbed, they're usually screaming. And at least Zana was awake, so I would think Zana would be like screaming, running. Oh God, it's so frustrating because I know the authorities are not giving us everything. There's got to be more to this, guys. No screaming. I'm just saying, something's not right. What y'all think? So let's read some other ones. I think I missed some of them. Yeah, I missed a lot of them. Okay, here the guy, Papa Roger, says, the killer has a sexual dysfunction. Thoughts? I agree with this, guys. I agree with this. I think Bryan has a sexual dysfunction. That's my opinion. I really think he does. And I think he literally told on himself here. He's been wanting to tell this for so long because he's had to live a secret his whole life. He had to live this secret. And again, just a disclaimer, all these are allegations and my mere opinions. None of them are facts. They're just theories and opinions. I can't emphasize this enough. But it's like he's literally feels this sense of freedom that he can secretly admit to it. I think this was the motive, that he had this sexual aggression inside of him that had been brewing, and he had been repeatedly rejected. A lot of these serial killers kill for this motive. I mean, BTK did. Ted Bundy talked about it. I mean, listen, you got to go back to listen to some of Ted Bundy's interviews. He does shed a lot of light on sick people, kind of, I think, have the similar mindset like Bryan, in my opinion. This is all opinions again. And then thinking back to Elliot and how Elliot had that same kind of dysfunction. And also, it's like it breeded this sense of aggression and anger in him. This is the motive right here on the screen. We already have the motive. Now, of course, the authorities can't say that on the news outlets, but I feel like we found it. I do, in my opinion. And Bryan's not going to come out and admit that he did this for this reason. Honestly, I don't think he's ever going to admit to it. He's going to keep denying it and denying it and denying it. He gives me that type of aura that he's not brave enough to admit to what he did, nor will he ever admit his motive, which is, if this prosecutor is bold enough to just tell it like it is, okay, and tell that the guy's an incel and had this sexual dysfunction, in my opinion, that means as they really dig deep into this guy's life, that's how they're going to be able to create the picture of the motive. You got to look at this guy's life, his relationships with women or lack thereof, the repeated rejections from women. And when you start looking at that, you can be able to see the motive. Sometimes the motive is not explicit. You're not going to hear a person say it. And I have to emphasize, the motive is not a part of the element. It's not even a requirement, meaning the prosecutor doesn't even have to tell the jury why he did this. It's not a requirement. And they will receive a jury instruction telling them that the prosecutor does not have to prove motive or even discuss that at all. But it is helpful for a jury to know why, because that's this itching question in the jurors' minds as to why this guy did this. And I think it's on the screen, guys. That's what I'm saying. I'm with Ron. Isn't that an itching question in your mind? Like, how could you not scream? Even Dylan says that she heard just a cry. That's why I feel he might have had two weapons, guys. In my opinion, they're not going to come out and say it. There was some type of other weapon that sedated these people, because how do you not scream when you're being stabbed? Whatever he used, it had to sedate them to the point where they couldn't scream or they were knocked out or something, guys. How do you not? I mean, if you're being stabbed, you're going to scream and run or do something. It just, I don't know. Something doesn't. Every time I hear about a stabbing, there's blood curdling screams that it's associated with. This is so eerie in my mind that nobody screamed. They literally was complicit in it. I know the coroner said everybody was asleep, but we know that's not true according to Dylan's statement. She says she heard two voices before this happened. She thinks she heard Kylie. Now I'm starting to believe that she did because she's on the second floor. She's not on the first floor. And the dog, the fact that the dog was barking. Kaylee knows her dog. And usually she probably is used to whenever someone arrives in the house or at the door, the dog barks. It's autopilot. The dog always barks when someone unfamiliar or shouldn't be there barks, or someone arrives that shouldn't be there, the dog will bark. So when Kylie was playing with her dog and noticed her dog started barking wildly, she knew someone was in that house. That's why I think it was Kaylee who said that someone was in the house now. It's starting to click for me because I'm like, she knows her dog. And if anybody has a dog, you'll know that sometimes your dog will, like, if you have a dog and you know your dog, some dogs will automatically bark whenever anyone comes to the door or if someone's not familiar. For example, the mailman comes and drops off mail, the dog will bark. Somebody comes to knock on your door, the dog will bark. Like anytime an unfamiliar person comes, or a person comes, period, the dog will bark. So the fact that the dog started barking makes me believe that maybe that's what clued Kaylee in on something was wrong. Like somebody was there that shouldn't be there. She was like, oh man, somebody's here because why is my dog barking this wildly? That's what I'm thinking. It's a theory, but we can go with different theories. We can say it was Zana. Maybe Dylan mistook the voice for Zana, but I'm starting to really think maybe Kaylee did suspect someone was in the house because her dog was barking very wildly when the dog sensed someone in that house. I'm just saying, I don't know. Y'all let me know what you think your theory is. But now that we know Dylan was on that second floor in that empty room, it's not far-fetched that she would hear it. Okay, let's look at this part of it, though. This person says, yes, he also likes his steak medium. That's what somebody says. And then Papa Roger says, is that your first thought? Okay, Papa Roger. Let's see any other posts they have. We talked about this one right here. Let's look at some other posts that he did. Oh, and also look at some of the cryptic questions that Bryan had on that survey. That's why I feel like he was asking these questions of these prior criminals to get ideas. Look at this, their survey question. How did you leave the scene? Before leaving, is there anything you did? See, he was trying to get ideas from these criminals. What kind of question is this? How did you leave the scene? He was getting ideas. That's why I feel if he was in that house for 25 minutes as the probable cause arrest affidavit states or alleges, they basically give us an estimation. I feel he would have had time to stage some things, stage the bodies the way he wanted them to be staged. Now, may not have staged Zana and all them, but I believe at least upstairs. Something about this. We need to know more details about this, but of course, we're not going to know until the trial. We'll get more information. But how did you leave the scene? Before leaving, is there anything else you did? This guy wasn't trying to do this for a thesis. He was doing this for his personal pleasure of trying to plan out his own criminal activity. It's sick. How did the killer leave the scene? Did clean up at all? Why would you ask some sick stuff like this? It's like he was trying to get ideas. Let's see if we could go back to this. And this person says, I think we should give them the dignity they deserve and not theorize on where their bodies were. Wow. And that's what they were saying because Papa Roger was theorizing. Papa Roger says, this is the discussion of the case, and you are participating by choice. Yeah, people was getting really suspicious about this guy. You guys let me know if you think he was suspicious. Wait, let's go back to this one here. They said, Papa Roger, the 4 victims didn't participate by choice. You are one sick individual. Glad you are locked up. See? See, they thought it was him. You see this? They tried to, they're here, they're like literally saying this was Bryan. Because there was something really cryptic about him. Wow. And notice he never responded to that. If this was some other profile, how come he never responded? How come he never responded, y'all? That is suspicious to me. I would have responded if I wasn't, you would think that was a pretty huge allegation. Glad you were locked up. No response. I think that's all. Well, let's see this one. Commercial.
Hey, do you ever walk into
Sorry,
a room
guys,
and
about that.
completely forget why you're there?
Yeah,
I'll just
totally.
skip that
Do you ever feel
to
like
the next one here.
Possibly
Okay.
even a vehicle that reminded him of something.
Perfect.
Someone
They
who
said
had spurned
possible.
him,
Let's see what this
robbery
is.
target,
Unobstructed
because the
view
door
lights
was
on
accessible,
at
had a
night.
grudge against previous tenants.
wait.
They lived.
Why did the killer? Okay, let's look at this. Here's another question he did. He says, why did the killer choose that house over all the others in that area? Interesting question. Yeah, you know the answer to that. You know the answer to that, Papa Rogers, because you were stalking that house. I'm just saying. Is it you think it's Bryan? Just not convincing enough? They say, this person says, Papa Roger, random killers will also target homes based on ease. This says, this person said, possible that the house fit a fantasy scenario in the killer's head, reminded him of something from his past. See this? Possibly even a vehicle that reminded him of someone who had spurned him. Robbery target because the door was accessible. Look at all the stuff he said. This right here is very cryptic and telling. Number one, he's giving the motive right here. Fit the fantasy scenario in the killer's head. Reminded him of something of his past. First of all, we are talking about based upon some of the allegations from women in his past. A lot of these women despised Bryan. They were bullying him in school, allegedly. They were throwing things at him. They were rejecting him. So maybe he was reminded of all the different rejections of his past. And one or more of these particular victims, the victims involved, reminded him of some of the girls that may have rejected him, or of some of the guys that were able to get the girls that he obsessed or wanted or attracted to. And because these women or woman, whatever one he targeted, reminded him of the rejections of his past, it built this anger in him. And when he had been looking for the victim that he was going to target, because I believe he had already chose before, in my opinion, that Bryan chose his victim or victims, he had already made up in his mind that he was going to commit a murder. But after he made that decision, that's when he started doing that survey thing to get ideas, figure out how he was going to carry this whole thing out. In my opinion, this is just an opinion. And then he made that decision that he was going to find the perfect victim or victims that he was going to carry this out. That's what I think. And that's when he started the stalking. Once he laid eyes on that person or persons, he was like, okay, these are the people, or this is the person I'm going to do this to. Again, we'll find out more in the trial once we figure out who the actual target or targets were out of these four victims. But look, and then look how it says, possibly even a vehicle that reminded him of someone who spurned him. Look at this. He's literally telling us his motive. A very similar motive that Elliot Rogers had, which is why I shared with you that video that Elliot Rogers put on his YouTube, his very last YouTube video he put, because it really, to me, helps us kind of understand some of possibly theories of what maybe Bryan might have been thinking. Whatever these women, the way they looked, reminded him of women of his past that he desired, that rejected, or in his mind, his egotistical mind, spurned him. So he started targeting them. And then also because the door is accessible. Well, he's been there 12 different times. So he knows how people enter and exit. There was one time in which he was there for a whole entire hour. What are you doing for a whole hour? He's looking at the house, studying how people get in, different stuff like that. He knew the back sliding door was open because all these different party goers were going in there in the back and different stuff like that. The guy studied this whole thing. Probably some of those nights he was there late at night, he may have snuck around the back, checked the sliding door, see if it was open, got ideas that, oh, the sliding door is usually open, but didn't carry, out the crime that night. Just went over there to check around the house and figure out ways of entering on different nights. Because look at that part here where this Papa Roger guy is saying because the door was accessible. And then we later find out, well, we already found this out, but we found out that door was, the sliding door was not locked. Just, wow. Oh, very cryptic statements here, right? This person says, random killers will also target homes based on ease. Let's see if Mr. Crime Circus here has any more posts. Okay. This person says 17 serial killers were born in November, compared with an average of 9 for other months. Out of a total of more than 100 in the study, those born in November are most likely to believe they get a raw deal. A 2005 study found that they grow up to be the most pessimistic. And Bryan was born November 21st. And he does seem to have a pessimistic, negative outlook on life. And we are going to find out more information about Bryan at the trial. You better believe that prosecutor, they're going to study inside and out of this guy. They're going to have posts, all that. They're going to pull all this guy's old profiles, even if he deleted his Instagrams or Facebooks or whatever. They can pull all that stuff up. They're going to look up this guy, and he's going to have some sick stuff. Probably when they went and searched his house, he probably had wrote some things, but he seemed to have some negative outlook on life and on the fact that he couldn't seem to get the attention of women. So that's interesting. What do you guys think about this study that says that compared with other average individuals, serial killers are born in November? That's quite interesting. Not sure how accurate it is, but it was a study that found that information. But what do you guys think about Mr. Papa Rogers?
I love
Oh
Honeybook.
gosh,
It
another
handles
commercial.
everything,
Sorry guys about these
proposals,
annoying
contracts,
commercials.
payments, everything I need on one.
Okay,
Of him for his profile picture.
let's look at this. Then look at the profiles here. This was the profile of Papa Roger. Does it look like Bryan? It does. The side profile to me does. What do you think? It's like he's kind of telling on himself, like the different profiles he uses, it looks like him. And even the attire he chose for this picture. Remember, we watched earlier in the live that Bryan aspired to be in the Army or the armed forces. Now there's this profile with this man wearing clothes, military or kind of army-like clothes or whatever, armed forces clothes, and got similar features like Bryan. Even the dipped cheekbone, kind of like that kind of dent here in the cheekbone. Bryan has that on his phone. Like, look at the side profile. He has that same dip in his cheekbone right here. Side profile, what do you think? It looks like him from the nose to the thin kind of paper thin lips, dipped chin, the eyes, even the eyebrows here, the dip in the eyebrows. Wow. This guy wasn't even trying to be incognito. Now he did the gray hair to make it look like an older guy, but still kind of obvious. Now look at some of these other cryptic questions he did in that Reddit survey. Before making your move, how did you approach the victim or target? Before making your move, please detail what you were thinking and feeling. This sounds like a guy who's trying to get a roadmap for committing his crime and getting it and trying to learn from experts who did it. Well, who failed at it because clearly they got arrested. After arriving, what steps did you take prior to locating the victim or target, person or object? Please detail your thoughts and feelings. These are cryptic questions. Why did you choose that victim or target over others? Well, we know why he chose these particular victims, because it reminded him of something of his past or the type of women he desired who rejected him. Again, credit to Mr. Crime Circus who put this in an area where we could just look at it. Another post that Papa Roger says is, I feel like the white car isn't relevant. Oh, he knows that white car is relevant, guys. Some of these things that this guy Papa Rogers is putting is trying to throw off the investigation. He knows it's quite the opposite. The white car is actually really relevant. And notice here, guys, the laughing emoji here. People are laughing because they know good and well he's trying to throw off the investigation. They know what he's trying to do. Interesting. What do y'all think? You think Papa Roger is a alias that Bryan was using to hide and, you know, kind of get involved in these different investigations on various social media outlets? You be the judge. Before making a move, how did you approach the target? Please detail. Why did you choose the victim? Oh, we already went over this. They're giving us the same stuff. Oh, here, right here. Okay. Then he says, then here, look at what Papa Rogers said on December 8th. Why did the killer choose that house over all the others in the area? What do we think is the entrance point to the crime scene? And then look at how stark similarity of this question is to the Reddit survey that Bryan did. Why did you choose that victim or target over others? Look, why did the killer choose that house over all the others in the house? Same language Bryan used in his survey. Look at that. It's like the spitting same format. Why did the killer choose that house? Why did you choose that victim or target over others? That house over all the others. Wow, same exact writing as Bryan. That's pretty distinct. When you compare the survey language to what Papa Rogers wrote, guys, wow. Wow. Oh my gosh. Now I'm starting to think it is Bryan. What do you think? Now look at this one. Let's compare how Papa Roger phrased and worded this question versus, or in comparison to how Bryan worded it on the Reddit survey. Papa Roger says on December 11th, how long do we think the killer was in the house? Then it says, before leaving, is there anything else you did? How did you leave the scene? It's like he's asking the similar questions as Bryan would have asked in the survey. This is really persuasive to me to lead me to believe this was Bryan's fake undercover profile. Wow. Wow, guys, what do you think? This is persuasive. Do we think the killer took anything from the house? I honestly, guys, and I can't wait for the trial because they're not going to release this information. I suspect he might have kept something from the scene. What if he went in and like stole maybe these girls' undergarments or some sick thing like that and took it to his house? Oh gosh, I don't want to think like that, but you know some of these sick people do stuff like that. And look what Papa Rogers is asking on the 11th. Do we think the killer took anything from the house? Well, you just kind of gave that away. Why would you ask that? How long do we think the killer was in the house? See, similar questions, guys, ask as Bryan asked on that survey. It sounds even how he worded the questions the same way. And we already know about that audio. There was an audio, guys, Oh God, another commercial. Sorry guys about these eerie, annoying commercials. Okay, I think I'm gonna play this again for you guys since we're analyzing these weird.
Of 7-5.
There was a profile that people are claiming, and the friend of Bryan is claiming. Again, all credit to Crime Circus for this because we're looking at some of his information. I love Crime Circus. Shout out to him. But do you guys think, so there was this weirdo guy that was on this YouTube channel. He called in and people were saying it was Bryan. Interesting enough, Bryan's friend, she claims it's him, guys. You guys be the judge, though. We heard Bryan's voice, you know, when he was speaking in the court, and the voices sound different to me. So I'm thinking it's not him, but the friend of Bryan says it's him. So y'all be the judge.
Kind of weird about all this is that I live in a college town and I've worked with probably at least 10 Sigma Chi members. The one thing that every single one of them I feel like has asked me is, if you were going to kill somebody, how would you get away with it? And I just wonder if maybe this is nothing more than some kid in a fraternity trying to prove himself. And that was it.
So you said you worked with 5 or 6 Sigma Chi kids and they asked you if you can kill somebody, they can get away with it?
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What kind of dudes would ask you that? That's crazy, man. That's an outrageous statement, man. I mean, I'd write their names down.
Yeah, man. You know, I like horror movies and all that kind of stuff, and I'll watch those kind of things. But like when someone like in person says some stuff like that, it's kind of like jarring. It's like, what?
Yeah, that's man. Who said that to you?
Well, what do you think? Did that guy sound creepy? Some people have said that phone call's been debunked.
After hearing Bryan enter his plea in court, I think it's debunked. What do you guys think? The friend, I don't know if I believe okay, there's some people out here trying to get clout. Let's just be real. Everybody and their mama coming out from the woodwork. So we kind of have to analyze different people, what their motives are. And that girl, Casey, at first I was, listening to her, but I'm like, this girl's gone on an interview tour. I've seen her now everywhere. And I'm like, I'm really starting to figure out what this girl's motive is. It feels like she's giving me clout vibes. Y'all let me know, though. I'm sorry if I'm being too real on here, but I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to not find her to be too credible because it's like she's all trying to be in the limelight and doing all these different interviews. And then some of her interview I listened to the other day was a little bit different than what she said on TikTok. So I'm like, okay, are you trying to say these different things to be in the limelight, or are you really trying to help, shed light on who this guy is? I don't know. So we got to kind of look at some of the things these people are saying and analyze it for ourselves because we're getting a lot of information. Some stuff is true, some stuff alleged, some stuff a lot of people are exaggerating. For example, that lady who's claimed to be in jail with him, and she claimed up and down Bryan said he was going to cut somebody and all this stuff, and come to find out that was all fake. So everybody trying to get their 5 minutes of fame, y'all. So I think whatever you guys think, but I think that video of the caller, I don't think that's Bryan because his voice sounds different when he entered his plea. Let's compare. Let me see. Court appearance. His voice sounds different. His voice didn't sound as raspy. Let's see. I'm gonna see if this video here, guys, has his voice so we can compare. But it didn't look like him. I mean, it didn't sound like him when he entered his plea. But who knows? He might have been trying to disguise his voice maybe on the call.
Attention parents of children diagnosed with autism or ADHD.
Used against you. You have the right to the presumption of innocence. That means the state bears the burden to prove that you are guilty of this offense beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to a preliminary hearing. A preliminary hearing is a probable cause hearing. At that hearing, the state must have committed the felony offenses. You have a right to have that hearing within 14 days if you remain in custody. If you are bound over at that preliminary hearing to district court, if the court finds probable cause, you would be bound over to district court. And at that time, you can enter a plea of not guilty, and you can have a jury trial set within 6 months of your appearance in district court. At both your preliminary hearing and your jury trial, Count 1 of the criminal complaint charges you with the felony offense of burglary. It alleges that the defendant, Bryan C. Kohberger, on or about November 13th of 2022 in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder in violation of Idaho Code 18-1401 and 1403. The maximum penalty for that offense, if you plead guilty or are found guilty, is not less than 1 year in prison, no more than 10 years in prison, and or a $50,000 fine or both. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay, when I heard him say yes, he didn't have that raspiness in his voice. Like the other guy has more of a raspy tone. This, the way Bryan is speaking here in the courtroom didn't sound like the same guy on the YouTube video. What do y'all think? Right. Okay. Alyssa says even his enunciation is different. That was not him, I don't think. Okay. I think we're going to debunk that. We're going to debunk the YouTube guy. Even though that friend Casey is coming out, I don't really find her to be too credible. She's been going on all these tours and stuff. Okay. Good. Alyssa says it's debunked. Who else? What do you guys think? I like to hear your take on anything. You have a great channel. Oh, love you, Lola. Thank you, my love. I appreciate that. Amazing Tribe said that sounds like the Killer Murdered BK. Remember, he's a character. Oh, yeah, he's an actual. Well, again, these are alleged. We can't say actual because we don't know yet. Who's portraying to be in criminology. Think about disguising his voice. You know what, Amazing Tribe? You bring out a good point, guys. He tries to disguise himself. If these profiles are him, it seems like he's trying to be incognito. If the Papa Rogers is him, the Inside Looking is him, the Chan 4 is him. He has all these different disguises. He tries to put in some fake information in these different posts to make it, not make him as noticeable. So it wouldn't be far-fetched, you guys, for him to disguise his voice on that YouTube video. But as of now, even though you make some valid points, Amazing Tribe, I'm just not willing to admit that it's him until we get more information, because I couldn't really. And you're right. He could have faked his voice, and the fact that he was near that area and he was talking about the fraternities over there and how he can get away with it. You guys, you might be onto something, Amazing Tribe. You might be onto something. Let's just kind of let that YouTube thing simmer before we make a decision about that YouTube video. But you might be onto something, because some of the information that person said was very suspect. From the question he said, people were asking me, if you were to commit a murder, how could you get away with it? Well, Bryan Kohberger studied that in school. I mean, he studied under Catherine Ramsland. He studied inside and out. He literally did a survey trying to figure out how these people committed their crimes and all that. So to me, it wouldn't be far-fetched for individuals who knew Bryan to ask him those type of questions, because he studies criminology and he studied forensic psychology, and he was in his PhD program. So individuals who are in criminology, the common question people would ask when they hear that you're studying that, they'll say, well, did you learn any cool things about how to get away with murder? That's what typical questions you would get. For example, if someone's studying psychology, people ask you, what am I thinking? Do you know what's in my mind? Can you think of what I'm thinking right now? Or what kind of personality did you figure out about me? And that is the same question I would get all the time when I was studying psychology in undergrad. When I would tell people what my major was, people always ask me all the time about, well, can you figure me out? What's my behavior characteristics? All this stuff. And I also had a minor in criminal justice. And so again, typical questions I get is, oh, did you learn about, how to get away with crime and stuff like that? So it's not far-fetched that would be a question that people would ask Bryan. So, you know what? Let's just let it simmer. But the voices, when I compare the voices, doesn't really sound like Bryan. But again, he could go into character and change his voice, guys. We can't. With this guy, anything's possible. If with this guy, anything's possible. Crystal says Bryan is the sharpest tool in the shed. Okay. Exactly. Lola says very creepy. Okay, he is, in my opinion, the genius PhD student in criminology left behind his knife sheath. Exactly, Boring Banana. He made a rookie move. And knowing from what people are saying or what the aunt is saying is that he has this OCD about him. It leads me to believe he literally obsessed about that horrible, careless mistake he made. He was obsessing about it so much that he knew, because he might have left that sheath in the house. That's when he starts wearing the surgical gloves, because he knew, even though I'm not in the criminal system, they may catch on to me because of my car. So I got to wear gloves so that my DNA is not found. Because notice how he took every step to prevent leaving his DNA on anything, from wearing the surgical gloves to cleaning every inch of that car inside and out based upon what the FBI has said, to meticulously or waiting strategically until 4 a.m. to take the trash out and then try to put it in someone else's trash and wear surgical gloves. Come on, guys. Yes, I get that the guys may not want to have germs on them, but come on now. Y'all know something was up with that behavior. Something shady. Okay, Lola says she is not sure. Okay, Alyssa says it's not the same voice to her. Good night, Chi-Chi. Love you, love. Okay, Zarp says it sounds like him. So we have some people in the group that says it sounds like him. Dragonette, hi Dragonette. It's so good to see you again, love. She said, I was in that group. You were? Dragonette, you were in the group? Okay, give us your take on it if you're still in here. Did you see that Papa Roger guy in the group? Did you find him suspicious? What did you think about him? Definitely seems like it's, to me, time will tell. Okay, yeah, we're going to have to wait for the trial, Alyssa. But that FBI agent, y'all, she seemed to think he was. So how much more do you think the FBI, right, Zarp? Zarp is saying the FBI is tearing his computer apart. If it's him, they'll know. Exactly. They will know. Right, Nine Angels, no ex-girlfriends are stepping up with statements. Exactly. We see all these friends and stuff coming out. We've got at least two guys I know of, a couple guys and classmates. Oh, not more than two guys, because we had a guy classmate come out and speak. I saw his interview. We saw another guy come out and say he was bullied by him. Another guy said he went long runs with him at night. We had the girl come out. We had another student. But no girlfriends? I don't think he had a girlfriend. Let's be honest. Because if a girlfriend, she would have been came out and said, he was creepy and he did some creepy things to me, which is why we broke up. Okay. Zarp says, how did he choose these specific people? A random bunch of 20-year-old college students? That's what I'm saying, Zarp. It had to have been at either maybe a bar, coffee shop, maybe the Mad Greek. He was over in that area. And you cannot exclude the fact that on Kaylee's Instagram, she had a post dating back to 2018 where she went to Washington State University for Spring Fest. So it's not far-fetched to believe or speculate that she may have also gone to some of the parties at Washington State University. They're only 8 miles away from school, not that far. So she could have went to a party over there, whatever, and in some happenstance, he locks eyes with one of these girls, and then it starts. Because like I said, he didn't have to have any relationship, any connection with these girls. These sick people, look at BTK. BTK would just, maybe walk in the neighborhood and see a lady and say, that's the one I'm going to, that's her. He just chooses her just by locking eyes, look at the person, and that's her. Some of these sick people out here, they don't need a reason. But in my opinion, I believe Bryan's reason stems back to the repeated rejection and now hatred and resentment he had towards women, and probably some men who are attractive that could get these women that he couldn't get. But yeah, so Lissa says, I didn't know he had military training, but it's possible. Just saying, as a vet, it can be done. Right. I don't think he had military training, but he had a desire to join the armed forces based upon his background information. And that video we watched earlier in the live, they did research and digged up information on him and found that he had an interest in it. I mean, not to mention he applied for also, the local law enforcement over there. So you got to put all the little pieces together and you start to understand how they all fit together meticulously, even from the very choice of the knife he used. They all fit together in these little pieces. Right. Like, I mean, I'm with Ron with here. How could you stab 4 people to death close proximity? I think he had another knife, or not another knife. Sorry. I think he had some other weapon that had to sedate these people, because how do you not scream when you're being stabbed to death? There's more to the story, guys, that we don't know about. There's a lot more. They didn't give us the details of how these people actually, what were the type of injuries they had. When the coroner gives her testimony in trial, that's where you need to really listen in on, because I guarantee there's going to be a lot of details that are missing for why, and the reason why we have all these questions. Okay. Hi, Chi Chi. She left, though. She said, did they do a toxicology report on the victims? Maybe he stuck them with something and used chloroform. See, Chi Chi, what if he did something? That is a wonderful, man, this is why I love talking to you guys about these cases, because you guys have some great input. That's what I was thinking before, but I didn't want to come out and say it, so I'm glad one of you guys said it. What if he used chloroform on them? Because how do you not scream? What if he did? Because he knew about the other 2 roommates in there, and those were not his target. And he knew if these 4 victims started screaming, that would have woke up the other 2 roommates. So he had to have done something to sedate these people for why they didn't have the blood-curdling scream. How do you get stabbed as gruesome as their people are describing this scene as? And we already saw the outside of that house bleeding. It was pretty horrific. And there's some details that have been disclosed that I'm not going to get into because it's pretty graphic about the stab wounds these poor young people had. So how do you not scream when you're being tortured to death with knives? That's why I feel Chi-Chi really think that she brought this up. What if he brought chloroform or some type of substance to sedate these people before he stabs them? He had to have thought about this, guys. He thought about this for months. He really put some serious thought into this. Guys, we're going to hear some more about this. They need to do a toxicology report on these victims. Right, Alyssa. Alyssa, you're right. It might be overkill. I agree with you on that. I think you might be right about that. And with, like Ron Thompson says, he likely had another weapon. Guys, he had another weapon. He had some other weapon to sedate them. That is going to be incorporated in our analysis. So when we regroup again and talk about this case, we will at least say that we believe and we suspect that our theory is there was another weapon. That's going to be in our analysis. Because, guys, how do you stab someone that horrifically and you don't scream? The officers would have put that in the report because they were able to retrieve surveillance that was near Kaylee's room, at least somebody who had surveillance over there. And the only sound they were able to take or extract from that surveillance was a whimper. Seriously, after you're being stabbed to death with the wounds that the coroner's talking about, big gouges in there? No, I'm sorry. And then the coroner said that their necks weren't slit. So if their necks weren't slit, then you would think they would be screaming. Bryan thought about this real intently. He brought something else with him. Could have been chloroform or something. But whatever he used, it sedated those people, those poor victims, to the point where they didn't scream. Because in a way, though, if he used chloroform or something to knock them out, that means they wouldn't have suffered, which that would be the one good thing about this tragedy. The one. I mean, wish it never happened at all. But If he used something to sedate them and they hopefully didn't feel anything. I'm just saying that would be the one thing. Okay. Dragonette says, thanks guys. I love all your input because y'all helped me kind of think this out. Dragonette says, I don't think chloroform works as fast in real life as it does in movies. Okay. Okay. So then we might have to take the chloroform theory out. But at least we could say, possibly though, he had something else there. He had to have. How did they not scream, guys? We got to figure this out. Right. He mentioned the stun gun. At first, I thought it was a stun gun. That's what my first thought was, because that's what Papa Roger said. So if he used a stun gun, aren't the stun, they do, when the stun gun will paralyze you. Or at least they lock your body locks if you're, but isn't a stun gun pretty loud? And the roommates would have heard that. They would have heard the stun gun because they're pretty loud. Okay, Nine Angels says, tranquilizers, darts, or gun. Okay. Ron Thompson says chloroform makes sense. How else could he do it without them waking and fighting for their life? Right. Because this, guys, you guys got to admit, it doesn't make sense to any of us. If somebody's getting stabbed, they're going to fight. They're going to run. They're going to scream. You're going to hear a blood curdling scream that will wake the whole freaking neighborhood. He thought this out. He thought this out, guys. He'd been thinking about this for several months. He knew the weapon he wanted to use. He knew there was 2 people in that house. He knew there was neighbors that could have been awoke and he would have been caught. He sedated them in some way. There was some other weapon used. Papa Roger's giving us clues. And I think it's Bryan. I'm just saying. There was another weapon used. And at that trial, they're going to let us know whatever was used, because how the heck do you not scream? And how does the surveillance doesn't pick up the sound of blood-curdling screams while they're being stabbed profusely with the horrific injuries that these poor victims had? We got to figure this out. I need y'all to do research to figure out what kind of weapon he would have used that wasn't loud enough for the roommates to hear, but that could have knocked these poor kids out so that they didn't scream, because this doesn't make sense. Someone said, I will help you. If that was him, he did something right. Right, Alyssa? Right, Alyssa, good point. Because, okay, we got to put all these different theories together. Because remember, Bryan or BTK had the same method with his victims. When he would bind them and tie them up, he then would help them. He'd say, I will help you. He let one victim smoke cigarettes to kind of calm her down. He put a pillow at the back of one of the victims because the victim had a back injury or whatever. So I feel like Bryan was taking from the book of Mr. BTK and kind of comforting his victims. But the fact that he said, I will help you, that makes sense, Alyssa. So he had to have done something that sedated this girl, and she was crying, whatever it was, but because she couldn't move or whatever, it paralyzed her or whatever. Because then he says, and it might have been his voice, I will help you. If that was him, if we find that that was his voice. And I'm starting to think it is him, because Ethan, it looks like, I don't know if this was true, but there was allegations that Ethan and Zana, they might have had some type of confrontation at the sorority party before they came back. I don't know if you guys let me know if that was true. There was an allegation of it. So Ethan would have fought Bryan. It would have been a whole fight in there. So my belief is he took out Ethan first. And then Zana's over here crying because she sees this happen. And he did something to sedate that girl, because how does she not scream? She's just crying. Make it make sense. The girl was stabbed to death. And not one scream. What Alyssa says makes sense. Yeah, Dylan said that she heard a voice say, it's okay, I will help you. So what weapon did he use to sedate Zana to the point where she couldn't move or whatever? I mean, she fought him. She had defensive wounds. In my opinion, the defensive wounds would have probably been her lifting her hand to block the stabbings or in some way. So maybe there's slashings on her hands, maybe her open palm hands, or on her arms where she's kind of putting up the defensive kind of her hands. I think this guy, he had long sleeves to prevent any like scratching. So I highly doubt there's DNA under her nails. I'm starting to think that now. When they said she had defensive wound. She might have had her hands up to prevent the stabbings in some way. Oh, this isn't making sense. I can't wait till the trial. We got to wait several years, guys. Oh, bleach? You're thinking bleach? Not if people are asleep. Well, Bryan, Amazing Tribe, we know Dylan wasn't asleep according to the probable cause. And Zana wasn't asleep. She just had received her DoorDash within minutes after he came. So she was awake. We know she was awake. Kylie was more than likely awake because Dylan said she heard Kylie playing with the dog and she said someone's here. So we can at least speculate based upon what Dylan's statements are that 2 people in that house, including Dylan, so that's 3 people in the house were awake. Dylan, Zana, and Kylie, allegedly. That's all we can really think of because we don't know about Maddie or what Ethan was doing. So those 3 people being awake, that means Kylie should have been fighting back and Zana should have been fighting back. Zana was allegedly had defensive wounds or fighting back, but I'm thinking she might have had her hands up to prevent whatever stabbings or whatever. Yeah, I'm wondering, Ron, if they must have been sedated, guys. This doesn't make sense. Okay, let's see what Alyssa says. Alyssa's got some serious going on. She got capital letters here. She said, I'm telling you from military training it's possible. Right. What if he used some type of his armed forces military kind of studies? Just saying, even if he's not military, there are spots that are instant. Sorry, was trying to be graphic. Okay. Oh. And we know that he's fascinated with armed forces and military and stuff. He might know. He studied this stuff, guys. So you might be right, Alyssa. There are spots that are instant. Okay. I think Alyssa might help clarify things. Because I feel like he studied this and he knew these girls were going to be clean, or these victims were going to be screaming, crying, acting wildly. So he did something, guys. He brought another weapon. There was more than just one weapon used, which is probably why he carelessly left that sheath, because he was too busy focused on all these 2 weapons he has in his hand. He's running out to get out to avoid being discovered and left that sheath carelessly. Did he turn the lights on in the room? Or did he have a flashlight when into the room? Good question, Nine Angels. We don't know that yet. Right, Nine Angels says he killed 4 people fast too, like in and out in 25 minutes. Right. You would think these people would fight him. Guys, I feel like whatever studies this guy's used, maybe in the armed forces, military research, whatever, because he even had a knife that they use. He studied how to sedate these people, guys. How do they not scream? Something that doesn't make sense. And the authorities know more than what we know. And we already know they held information from us before about what Dylan knew. They clearly lied to everybody to protect Dylan, which is great. But that's a demonstration that the authorities don't always tell us the truth, y'all. So they know a lot more, because it doesn't make sense that these victims did not scream when they're being stabbed to death, especially because we can at least speculate based upon Dylan's statements that at least Zana and Kaylee were awake. We don't know about the other 2, but at least Kaylee and Zana. So, right. And like Nine Angels says, none of the victims try to run out the room while the other's being killed. Exactly. Exactly. My gosh, you guys are asking all the questions in my head. Because Zana was awake. So when Zana saw this guy come in, unalive, probably, I'm thinking Ethan first, take out the stronger threat first. How come Zana didn't run out? Because if I saw, I would have ran out. I'll be done. I'm out of here. Which leads me to believe he knew there was going to be 4 people. He thought this whole thing out. He used another weapon. I'm starting to think Papa Roger is Bryan in disguise, in my humble opinion. And he was giving us a clue that there was another weapon. That other weapon was used to sedate these poor victims. And then he used the knives to stage them and he used the knife as the brutal injuries because he wanted it to be very graphic. That's what he wanted. So I feel this was staged, guys, for his sick pleasure. But he used something to sedate these guys. There's no way they didn't scream. Come on. He also trained in martial arts. Yeah, he has kickboxing, right? Was he trained in martial arts and had a black belt? Definitely ways to subdue a person. Okay, I have not heard about him being trained in martial arts. I know he was trained in kickboxing, but if he was trained in martial arts, that adds context to the analysis. If you guys have known about him doing martial arts, please let me know. Okay, Dorsey has another theory. She says she thinks he was Ethan saying, "I will help you get away from the killer." Okay, that might be possible. That might be possible. We really don't know anything right now. We really don't know. What if Ethan was saying, "Come on, I'll help you," and then he gets attacked again? But why would there not be loud noise, guys? Why would there not be loud noise? Why wasn't Ethan saying anything? Alyssa says, right, he planned this. We don't know for how long. Exactly. Well, that's true. Think about the whole survey he did. He could have been planning this for months and getting ideas from the people, the criminals out here that are answering his questions. A lot of people are weak and won't put up a fight as they'll just give up. I don't know. If somebody's killing you, you're going to fight with all your might, guys. Come on. They're not going to sit there and let somebody stab them. Just sit there and just go ahead, finish me off. No. People are going to fight for their life. It's called fight or flight. They would either fight or run. That's the normal reaction to being murdered. Come on now. I don't know, Amazing Tribe. I don't know. They said Sana was just self-absorbed and didn't care. I don't know. They did say Zana fought. I'm interested in knowing what she did. Those rooms are small. He would be blocking the way. Oh, yeah, that's true. That did look like a small house, the house we seen. Okay, Ron says it wasn't sedation. I didn't want to say. He may have had something more gruesome to knock a person senseless. Oh, Lord. How did Dylan not hear anything, guys? Oh, kickboxing is martial arts. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Really? Is kickboxing martial arts, y'all? Because I do kickboxing. Oh, I guess it is martial arts, I guess. I do it in class. I do it like for workout. I guess you can say martial arts. Okay, martial arts, you study the pressure points in anatomy. Oh, gosh. Right. Roger says, sounds like Papa Roger is Bryan. Right. I still think he brought another weapon of some sort. Yeah, Mason Tribe is good. I like Mason Tribe. That's my boy. That's my moderator. Go, Mason Tribe. In martial arts, you study pressure points. Okay, so y'all bringing up some good points. We'll have to revisit this analysis again once we get more information. But I think we're starting to come on to some information that'll help us figure this out, because y'all know we are going to have to wait until the trial to get all the details. So we have a lot of questions that have not been answered that the authorities probably already have the answers to. We will regroup. But as of now, when we're going to conclude this, all content is alleged or opinions or entertainment purposes. All are presumed innocent, which means Bryan Kohberger is presumed innocent until proven guilty in the court of law, which I suspect he will be found guilty. I'm just saying. Love you guys all. Thanks for sitting with me these many hours trying to figure out this whole tragedy. I have so many questions about this tragedy. It really just breaks my heart and haunts me to the core. And we have talked a lot about tragic cases on this channel, but no criminal cases have really haunted me in this way and literally gave me the chills of fear like this tragedy. To think a guy out there or a person out there or a creep out there doesn't even know you, locks eyes with you, and then all of a sudden starts obsessively stalking you and then planning your demise when you don't even know who they are. That's scary. All right. Good night, guys. Hit the like button, please. Comment and let me know your theories. On this channel, we do theorize, we do analyze, we do speculate. I like the opinionators. That's cute. Opinionators. I said litigators, but we're opinionators here. We like to formulate our opinions on this channel and analyze and utilize our critical thinking. Love you all. Have a good night. Good night, Amazing Tribe. Amazing Tribe says, take care. Until next time, good night. And justice for Shanquella, justice for the Idaho 4, justice for any victims that have been tragically taken from our earth from these sick, decrepit people. Love you guys. Take care. Good night. And let me know what other stories you would like me to cover. Take care.